Urban Renewal regular meeting of March 7th, 2012. Welcome, Commissioner, staff, audience, and would you please take roll here, Nancy?
Commissioner Neely.
Here.
Commissioner Roth.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Yates.
Here.
Commissioner Peterson.
Here.
Commissioner Mum. Commissioner Edgar.
Here.
And Chair Shaw.
Here. All right, we're going to have citizen comments for anything other than what's on the agenda tonight. If there's items on the agenda tonight that you want to speak to, we'll speak to them at that time. But anything other than that, you can bring forward now. And we have none. Okay. So we're going to adopt the agenda.
I have a question about the agenda.
Yes, Commissioner Yates.
Last time we talked about the Clackamas Landscape and Supply lease. I thought we were going to bring it up next in executive session.
We had an executive session on that,
On this lease?
on this lease last meeting.
Oh, I wasn't.
I don't think you were present.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay.
Excuse me.
All right, are we good? All right. Anything else on the agenda? All right. We don't need a motion for that, do we? Okay. General business, 4A, local agency agreement number 28220 between State of Oregon, City of Oregon City for federal aid surface transportation program funds to design and construct improvements for McLaughlin Boulevard Enhancement Project Phase 2, aka 0 or 99E, Clackamas River Bridge, Dunes, Oregon City project. Nancy Crushauer is here. Great, yes. Nancy, here we go.
Yeah. Thank you. Good evening, Urban Renewal Commission Chair and Commissioners. This is one of the many steps that we follow in preparing to do the projects that are funded with Metro Transportation Improvement Program budget funds, which they're federal dollars, so there are many steps you need to do, and the local agency agreement is one of them. Once the local agency agreement goes forward, then some of the follow-up project design can start to occur. The funding actually starts rolling, and we can get going on the project. So this agreement tonight is a pretty standard agreement from ODOT, and our city attorney has reviewed it. Basically what it does is it states the obligations of ODOT and the city in terms of completing this project and the funding associated with the project. I know that a lot of you have not been as involved in this project as perhaps the mayor has, and of course myself. The funds were actually originally applied for in 2005, 2006, and the plan, the McLaughlin Boulevard plan, actually originated back in like 2004. So this has been kind of a long, well, this is the way they're supposed to happen actually. You have a vision, you do a plan, a quarter plan, and then you dice it into various phase projects, and then you seek funding for the projects, and then you implement the projects. So it's just kind of interesting how long it takes. But I did send the Urban Renewal Commission an email yesterday afternoon so I could provide a little more background on the project for those of you that haven't been on the commission for that long, which, like I said, I think Mayor Neely's the only indicate that this project is required to be designed in compliance with the Creating Livable Streets guidelines that Metro has created for regional boulevards in 2040 centers, and we'll be doing that in collaborating with ODOT, and because sometimes the ODOT requirements don't quite match the Metro's community or regional boulevard standards. But ODOT is, as we did on Phase 1, we do a lot of talking and a lot of negotiating, and we do get to a standard that everyone can agree to. Does anyone have any questions?
I've got one. The process in terms of, I'm thinking about what we went through on phase one more than what we did on phase two, and that was a protracted process as well. As I recall, we actually did make some improvements that extended into the phase two area when we were doing the phase one work. I don't know if that's correct, but I believe that's correct. And do these get undone in the process, or you know?
Right. No. Yeah. You have a good memory there, Mayor Neely. The ODOT towards the end of the phase one project, ODOT decided that they'd like to change the lane configuration at Dunes and McLaughlin Boulevard, and they added side-by-side left turn lanes, and the idea was to make the lanes as long as possible so that the Dunes Drive intersection would function as good as possible, as well as the southbound I-205 ramps. And that got added to the old project. ODOT paid for that part, and that will not change. The only thing we're adding at that leg of the intersection is pedestrian crossings. So we'll have signalized ped crossings and crosswalks. And
That's where, Nancy, that's at the,
At the Dunes Drive.
right, it would
at
be on the
Dunes, okay.
south leg of the Dunes Drive intersection.
okay. All right. Thank you. That's kind of it, Nancy? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I wanted to add, too, that I added when I sent the email, just to help folks understand what the project looks like, I added 2 attachments to the email, and I'm going to enter these into the record with Nancy Ide, our city recorder. One which illustrated the project when we applied for the funding, and then since then we've done a little bit of tweaking and refinement as we've looked at better sidewalk connections to Clackamas Park and some stormwater improvements to address water quality requirements. And so in your email yesterday, I attached both of those so you could see this is kind of what the project looks like.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I see, Paul Edgar, Commissioner Edgar. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Nancy, what have you received in comment from the motel and from McDonald's and in comment that you can share with us, and as well as the Oregon City Shopping Center about their perceived impacts? What are you hearing, and what can you share with us?
Well, about 18 months ago, I haven't been in touch with the hotel at this point, but about 18 months ago, the hotel was hoping that we could add on to their parking lot. And at that time, we really couldn't say. We weren't anywhere near towards that kind of a design standpoint. And McDonald's, our project manager, has met with McDonald's to talk about changing the access on Dunes Drive and changing their primary access to be off of Clackamas Drive. We've got Clackamas River Drive, we've got Clackamas Park, we've got Clackamas Cove. So that one of the things we'd like to do with this project is get that access be just a sidewalk, that's pedestrian access to McDonald's, the one that's on Dunes Drive.
And does this enhance some of the properties owned by the city or the Urban Renewal Commission in that area to make those properties more merchantable or more developable for some client?
I would say so. I don't know if they're owned by Urban Renewal. There's some city properties down by Clackamas Park
Yeah, they're city property.
where the old wastewater treatment plant used to be, that having these improvements on McLaughlin means that anybody developing properties or redeveloping properties along that corridor don't have to do any frontage improvements in accordance with the McLaughlin Boulevard Enhancement Plan. I neglected to mention the Oregon City Shopping Center I think the Oregon City Shopping Center is very pleased that we're doing our project now, because they were actually, as they redevelop that shopping center, they would be conditioned to make the sidewalk improvements that are identified in the McLaughlin Boulevard Enhancement Plan as part of their land use application.
The right-of-way that's associated with McDonald's coming off of Dunes Drive, is that if that is closed off, who owns that? Because that cuts apart that lot that's there.
Yeah,
and
that's
effectively,
a complicated lot.
it makes that lot less
Useless.
valuable.
There's an easement across that lot right now that it's the city property, and it's a very narrow parcel. I don't know if it shows on the drawings that I passed out, but the right-of-way for Dunes Drive is very wide, and that resulting parcel between the Dunes Drive right-of-way and McDonald's is a very narrow strip. And there's a stormwater crossing across it, and there's also an easement across it that is an easement to access the McDonald's property.
Would it be possible that somewhere in this negotiation, or whatever happens, if there is, that we could try to make that property developable, something that could be actually become merchandise and bring in tax increment within the area?
We can look at that.
Because
Right now, it's envisioned as a gateway with a sign, and part of it already is a stormwater detention pond, and we were going to enhance that pond as part of this project, take some of the right-of-way runoff and use that for stormwater management. But there's still another piece left, and as the design proceeds, we can look at what alternatives there could be for that parcel.
And lastly, but I will probably talk about it more later, but is the area of the $1 million worth of urban renewal funding that is being asked for within this agreement right now, are there any other possible sources for those funds other than urban renewal? Because we continue to do projects that do not create TIF. And when they don't create TIF, or they don't create a plan that gives us real repayment, they tack on to the end of, or create more debt or more money being taken from the community college or from the schools or from other sources over a longer period of time. And therefore, anything that happens that continues to take money like that without tax increment being generated is a problem. And I would like very much to find out if there is any other source of revenue that or in monies any place, because I find that to be very sad.
Well, the only reply I really have for you that I can state factually is that I don't know in the Public Works budget where there's money for this project. I don't think there is money for this project in the Public Works budgets. And second of all, this project is in the Urban Renewal Plan, and it has been envisioned as a public investment that would improve the environment along that corridor in a way that it could promote redevelopment of the private properties along the corridor and make it more attractive for existing businesses to stay there because they have a nice, welcoming, well-landscaped arterial running right in front of them. And so it's more attractive to stay, and it's more attractive to redevelop because you have high-quality infrastructure already in place. And Eric, would you add anything to that?
I was just going to say, you're lightening the burden on even new development to make those improvements. Might be required to make certain improvements out there.
But anything that we can do to create an ability to convert property to real development and real tax increment has to be part of any of our plans, because it's been estimated, and I'd like to get it fully verified, that we spent $20 million on non-tax increment generating projects, salaries, everything over the last, let's say, 10 to 12 years buying property. And somewhere along the line, we have to start creating some real projects that create tax increment jobs, a better economy, and And when we don't do that, we're not being really honest with the citizenry. And I
Right.
think this is just another, it's increment, it's very small in total picture of
Yes.
everything we've been doing, but it's just one more piece, one more thing on top of it when we need to become fiscally responsible.
This is just hearsay, but I understand that in the Oregon City Shopping Center has some kind of big ideas for their property, what they could do down there, and that it having McLaughlin Boulevard be a much more attractive, pedestrian-friendly, better access to the river, place, sort of more of a place than just a big, fast-moving arterial, could attract different users to the Oregon City Shopping Center site that could perhaps even end up one day creating this tax increment that you're talking about. That's not something that I know of a plan in place, but it's kind of, I've heard about it out there.
Well, I guess if I could just give an actual real-life example. When Oregon City Shopping Center came in to do the remodel that they're currently working on right now, their intention was to put a building at the north corner of Dune and 9090. They pulled that building because they would have had to make the significant infrastructure improvements along 9090 along the state highway. If this project would have been completed when they came in for their application, they would have constructed a building. Since Nancy's met with the Oregon City Shopping Center representatives, they've contacted us to figure out when can they submit to build their building. When is the money vested so that they wouldn't have to make those frontage improvements. So this would be an example of kind of the economic development that you're talking about. It's not necessarily, we're not putting it directly into a property and constructing something, but this improvement is going to lead to construction on that site.
Green taste is different types of development. Usually, if you make an area more pedestrian friendly or slow it down, you're going to get a different level of business in that area, which would ultimately create new jobs or create more value for that area. So it's kind of indirect.
Okay, Commissioner Neely.
Some of the points that Paul was making was what I was going to talk about, but then I found something else I could talk about. We have this area on the map here that's shaded along Clackamas Drive and part of the Main Street extension, then up that little road there that goes to the shopping center. Is that indicated of improvements that are going to occur? Some of that's not state highways.
Let's see if I can recall. The plan for that area at this point is our project manager also obtained some funding from ODOT for stormwater quality improvements, and we are going to use that money to, right now there's kind of a hodgepodge of stormwater from the parking lot, stormwater from McLaughlin Boulevard, and then it goes straight to Clackamas Cove without any kind of treatment. And so that is something that we're going to use those enhancement funds we got from ODOT to improve the stormwater quality along there. It would be really great, and we'll see how the budget goes. You know, we're in just preliminary concept plan design here, and we would love to put sidewalks along Firestone Alley as well. If we have the budget, we would do that, but we won't know that until we're farther into design. And I know that was a condition of approval for the shopping center at one point, but then they're not moving forward with those improvements.
Now, is Firestone Alley within the state's right of way?
Yes,
So is it actually a state facility?
it's state right of way.
Okay.
So, what we have here is kind of a historical issue that we kind of committed to a few years ago, sounds like. And that's number one. Number two, this is kind of the entry to our city. So we're kind of improving upon that. And Commissioner Edgar, I hope that on my watch we're going to ask a few more questions about projects. But when we look at the history of this one, I feel like we're kind of obligated to this. And I understand, and I think that's great that we are trying to find other sources for revenue. Good question. And but that's kind of my take on it. I don't know if, okay, we have Commissioner Mum.
Thank you. Sorry I was late. Meeting downtown Portland. A couple of comments. I understand what you're talking about, Commissioner Egger, about TIF, and we need the money coming back in the coffers. I get that. I get the history. I do think we're kind of obligated at this point. I kind of feel that way too. I have a question about why are we putting sidewalks on a state road?
Why are we putting sidewalks on? Well, there are sidewalks there today, but we're going to beautify the state highway.
Well, I might have an issue with that, just so you know. I just want to be out front. I think the state needs to start paying their own way here. But that's my own opinion.
So this is considered more of a regional boulevard project that fits in with our regional center, and that's one of the primary reasons we received the funding for the project as well. And it's also a transit corridor that improving pedestrian infrastructure is very helpful for transit, to make transit more accessible.
Okay, Commissioner Roth.
Okay, I printed out the little things you sent us today, and my question is, how much of this design concept is in concrete?
This
I mean,
is
not in concrete.
I like that, Kathy.
well, this is the concept, the design concept. It hasn't. We haven't done any. We haven't done our 50% drawings yet.
Your 50% drawing?
Right. We have not.
Okay,
We
so-
don't have the money's not flowing yet. This is all concept design.
So, when I'm seeing a roundabout here, which I think is not appropriate, we're going to have input on that?
You may, if you like.
Yes.
I guess I'd like to know.
Poor Nancy.
Yeah.
We should have emailed you all of our questions
Is
in
this-
advance.
That would be nice. We can to talk about the roundabout. The roundabout has been included in the project for a number of reasons, but I guess I would want to know, what the concerns are.
Okay. Okay, so that's a discussion for further on? Okay.
But we'd like to probably discuss it sooner than later before we start spending a lot of design money on it.
Okay, don't.
Well, I would think it's a discussion for the entire.
Well, I've been talking to,
commission.
I want to see numbers that justify a roundabout. It seems to me a ridiculous idea to take boats and trailers and trolleys on a roundabout. It just doesn't seem to fit, and that intersection does not have a lot of vehicles. I just don't see any reason to spend that kind of money, because I understand from design people that roundabouts are more expensive than just putting in some stop signs.
They're a nice thing to have, yeah.
Okay, we'll move to Commissioner Smith.
Can Commissioner Roth pass those down so I can see them? I have not even seen those yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
here we go.
I've just got one of them.
Okay.
Do we not have copies of these for the meeting?
I emailed them to you yesterday. I did not
Yesterday,
make
I know,
copies.
but we don't
for
have
the
copies to
meeting.
look
I
at.
didn't. Get
No, I
copies
did.
if you want. Bring copies for the meeting.
Can I make one comment about the roundabout?
Commission.
Where is that on?
hang
It's
on.
not showing on their
Hang on.
rocket.
Hang
Well,
on.
that's because it's not showing the whole intersection. It's only showing.
Do you
So
want to?
did you
I
have
have
a-
some extra copies here, Commissioner. I can just.
Did you have a
pass
comment,
on over.
Commissioner Smith, or just look
Well,
at
I mean,
this?
I've been on the commission for 4 years, and when I first heard about the roundabout, I've never seen anything. I've never heard anything about it, so that was a shock to me.
Yeah.
So, I'm reluctant to vote on anything when I haven't seen visuals for, and I haven't seen any visuals that imply anything like that for the last 4 years. So,
And really, this is a discussion item here this
Okay.
evening, isn't
This
it,
is
Nancy?
to start the design,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no monies involved.
That's
This-
all.
Not tonight.
She's
This is-
asking for an approval tonight.
I'm asking for approval of local agency agreement that sets the
I'd like to go-
expectations of
that ain't
the.
gonna happen tonight.
Well, it's not. This is not a final design document whatsoever. This is so that we can start working on the design with the consult, so that we can get a consultant on board, so that we can start working on the design, and you guys can be part of a public involvement committee if you'd like.
Okay, Commissioner Neely?
Yeah. I mean, my recollection is that the city has to come up with some kind of match on these MTEP funds.
Right.
And I assume that what we're coming up with here, irrespective of how that's spent, we have to make a financial commitment. And that's a certain percentage, is that right?
Right.
And that's what you're asking for.
We're asking the Urban Renewal Commission to commit to the local agency agreement, and it states that over the federal contribution of, I think it's 3.3 million, the Urban Renewal Commission will cover whatever's beyond that in the project.
Or is it $1 million?
3.4 million is what we're getting in federal funding.
Well, I mean, there is an expectation for us to have a match.
Yes. There's a
And-
minimum match. And at this point, I think the minimum match is like 10.8%. But the project budget, when we did the conceptual, was over that. And now we're getting into traffic studies. And ODOT has not, they're probably going to require a right turn lane that is a little bit longer than we anticipated in the concept plan. So we don't know exactly how high the budget is. I think in our urban renewal budget for this last year, we budgeted $1 million for the city share. And then in next year's budget, it's going to be about the same.
Okay.
Okay, so
Excuse me. Commissioner Edgar, please.
Nancy, your statement about we're going to cover this if it goes greater than $1 million.
No. We're doing, if we are saying we're accepting federal funding in the amount of $3.4 million, and in so doing, that's all the federal government will give us. So anything beyond that, the city needs to cover. That's what it's saying.
Okay.
We're committing to that. And it's our job to make sure that we don't go over budget. So,
And the budget's $1 million.
right.
Right. In this $1 million, and again, not that I'm paranoid about us continuing to accrue debt that we can't pay for, but that if right now we owe, the urban renewal on the balance sheet owes $1 million to the city from some coffer, from some account, for money still due on the obligations of building this building. In the last budget, urban renewal budget process, I could see at the bottom there was still $1 million debt owed by the urban renewal. And what I'd love to see is if we were to put money in, like $1 million into this project, I'd like to see $1 million, that debt disappear. Because I don't want to continue to see us building debt without TIF to pay it off. And if we've got debt out there that's for building this non-taxable, non-increment bearing building and improvements, this is an example where you delete that debt with the city and we give the money there, but net to the Urban Renewal Commission, we haven't incurred more debt.
Okay. Commissioner Mumm.
Okay, since we're talking about the roundabout, and I know it's a design thing, if it's not going to go there, can it go up on Division and Morala and stuff? Oh, it needs to be there, okay? Come on, you guys.
All right.
That's where I want it. But my thing is, I think that we're kind of obligated at this point, is kind of the feeling I'm getting, because we want to make these improvements to get businesses to look at us and say, whoo, aren't we beautiful, and we want to come to you, right? Isn't that right? Even though I understand about this building, maybe if this commission would have been in place 100 years ago or whatever, then this building wouldn't be here, Paul. But right now we have to kind of move forward, right?
Maybe it could have been bigger.
And it could have been bigger.
Well, we have to move forward, but we have to stop living on borrowed money.
Right.
We have to stop running this city on borrowed money. That's not fiscally sound.
Right.
And I wouldn't do that in my home.
Right.
And I don't feel like I've been elected to do that here.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why the proposal of saying, hey, let's not, this is a way to net it out.
Okay, so kind of like what's your recommendation?
My recommendation is if we enter into advancing or okaying this agreement, that we at the same time look at vehicles or methods that will allow us to not to net it out. It just be it voiding out or eliminating or that debt that we show on the books still owed, or through the sale of properties or whatever it is, but somehow by the time, and this is going to take a period before the obligation of the money is going to be taken by Nancy, we're just saying we have obligated it.
Maybe we could look at it the way that we are actually bringing in $3.4 million in the
Yeah.
urban renewal district.
Yeah, but
with
that's
project.
like that's false god sometimes too, when it's federal money and it's
a
our
lot of
money anyway and
infrastructure.
we're spending it. But really, this case is can we turn around and figure a way that we can come up with $1 million from urban renewal without us getting into greater debt? And wherever that comes from, I just think that we need to be looking at that as a fiscally responsible approach towards non-increment bearing products.
Right, and I totally agree with both you and Kathy about that. But I think at this point, I think that the possibility of us making our money back for this would probably, I think it's a good possibility.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
there's a lot of debate here, and this is really policy debate about whether to fund a public infrastructure project like a street versus a building. And there's fine differences there, of course, and whether or not this street improvement, this boulevard improvement, is likely to create an environment in which there might be enhanced investment. Now, we have some real-time data here from the shopping center that it's likely to do at least that on a partial level. I think really what you're looking at here is that the commission and the city many months ago committed, a different commission, different group of folks committed to try to engage in this grant opportunity. We have it in front of us, so it's you know, these local agency agreements are required. It's kind of boilerplate from ODOT. The thing I want to bring up, though, is that there's a lot of concern about a roundabout. There's concern about the design, whatever it's going to look like, and how much input you're going to have, and I would like to say a couple things about that. Number one, this is still an ODOT state facility. I'm always a champion of saying that local jurisdictions, that the ODOT facilities that pass through them should reflect the community's local values, and so there should be what ODOT calls context-sensitive design. And I went through a long battle with ODOT with my former city in Grants Pass when we tried to discourage them from building an expressway through our city. We wanted it to be a boulevard. So it's ironic that I'm here now and they're trying to build a boulevard instead of an expressway. So I'm really good with that. But I think I want to just caution you that our community, each of you, as many of our citizens as can be, should be involved in the design process when those public hearings come out, when the open houses are part of the design process. When those are availed to you, you should take advantage of them, because ODOT is still ultimately in control of this facility and not us, but we should have a chance to influence it. And there could actually be a disagreement between the city and ODOT about something like a roundabout, for example. If they insist on having it, we insist on not having it, there could be a conflict there that we'd have to work through. But I think you need to know when you enter into one of these local agency agreements on a project with ODOT and it's their facility, there's no guarantee for sure that you can dictate the outcome of the design. And this isn't a design meeting, but when you think about those, you can influence a design, but there's no guarantee. And if you don't enter into a local agency agreement, there's no guarantee on how they're going to design their facility. So all you can do is exert your best influence. We have a really good working relationship with ODOT, thanks to a lot of years of, I think, hard work and conciliations and lunchbox meetings and so forth. So I think we're in a better position than a lot of cities, and I also find that ODOT in the metro tends to listen more to cities' input than they do in other parts of the state. So I feel pretty confident that your voices will be heard in the design, but there isn't a guarantee. And I think it's important that we note that for you. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
I've known about this project for a while, so I'm not surprised by that, and I generally support it because I think that it is the interest of the city, and it is the first thing that people see, and I think it does probably encourage some things happening at the shopping center. I guess my only reservation tonight was, the same reservation I have anytime we get emails the day before where things aren't included in our packet and don't have enough time to even look or review them. So I've been extremely busy this week. I didn't have a time to look through these in any length of time, and this is the first time I've even seen this map. So I always have caution on voting something that I haven't even looked at. So that's the only concern that I had.
All right, Commissioner Roth.
Okay. I did actually read through I don't know what's called a contract or a local agency agreement, I guess, and didn't see any restrictions on design in there. So I would say that that's pretty much open to us, if that's...
Well, it's open to us, but it's a state facility, and so when I've been in a position before on behalf of a city to argue, can't we plant some larger trees? Can't we do some enhanced landscaping? And they will argue, no, we don't do that. You're not close. You're too far you're too close to the curb and so forth. And then I'll point out 99E right down the road from us where we have a huge canopy of trees, and they'll say, well, that's an exception.
Yeah.
I just need to make sure that you understand there's not a guarantee. There isn't a restriction in here, but there's also not a guarantee of particular concepts.
Okay. The other part of it that I would really want to make sure happens is we've got 1 million. That's a cap. That's we don't go over budget. There's no question we go over budget.
Well, let me say a word about that then. I was last in Southern Oregon where, believe me, the ODOT version down there is a lot different animal than the one we have, and I'm glad the one we have is more user-friendly. So that bias set forth in advance. The reason they say that there's that cap is some cities will say, well, gosh, we like this, but we want this bell and this whistle, and we want the power windows and the door locks and all these other features that cities will insist on there being in there. And what ODOT does typically in the rest of the state, and a little less here, is they build what I call a prison road. It's a curb to curb, and if you want the bells and the whistles, you pay extra. And I think that's what the cap is for, is to say if you want things that are extra and beyond the scope of the project, we'll do them, but you got to pay for them. And that's when they come back and we'll say to you, well, you want this and that and all these other things. It's beyond the scope of their funding, but if you want it and we can find the money, we'll do it.
Okay, so we'll get that opportunity.
That's what that means. That's what that
We'll
means.
have that opportunity, though.
Above and beyond $1 million, you will.
Well,
if you want it.
It actually would happen in the budgeting process.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Neely.
Yeah. I think we're getting tied up in the specifics of the designs. I understand, well, I guess I'll just talk about a vision that I have, is that when we get and there will be at one point a light rail line of some form coming into Oregon City. We don't know when that'll be, but I personally like to see a trolley operating down McLaughlin between Milwaukee and Oregon City. I'd like to see it come down and ultimately come down at the Main Street extension and go through Main Street and right into the area that is the old Blue Heron site.
what birthday's coming up, Doug?
Your birthday's coming up. And I think the point that you're making on the roundabout is a point that ought to be discussed. Where we might see if there's a general agreement that at one point in the future we want to see a rail system come in, we haven't identified any areas, and I think maybe we can have the discussion about that particular concept. And if in fact something like a roundabout doesn't work there, I'd be in total agreement with you. I remember, I go back a long time, and I remember Gleason and 39th, where they come together, there is a roundabout, and the trolley went right through the middle of the roundabout. And actually, the curb cuts were there up until 15 years ago for those trolley rails. Yeah. That was, in fact, a dangerous roundabout even after the trolley disappeared, but they redesigned it, and it operates very, very well now. But I think we have to incorporate those kinds of things into our design discussion, looking at the long-term use of this particular intersection. But I'm in favor of the project. We're not committed to a given design at this point.
Right.
And since our monies are being put forward, even though we're going to have a public involvement session involving the public in general, it's our money that's coming forward, and we all need to be part of that discussion.
Absolutely.
All right, Commissioner Edgar.
Well, the water swale rain garden that's proposed right along Dune Drive, is there any way that could be put down on the other side of Clackamas Drive, down closer to the Willamette River? The reason why, and why it's critical, is that, again, this is an extremely valuable piece of property that we're, through the stormwater mitigation plan, we're destroying its merchantability of it. And so if I take a lot like that and I look down at it and say, if there was some entity like McDonald's, it could be that, or whatever it is, because it's going to have high visibility, it's got great access, and now all of a sudden we
Actually, the most of
destroy
that,
it.
that is in the right of way.
Well, I would love to see, if we have control of some of that we do everything we can to enhance the market. We want economic development. We want jobs. We want to convert property that can be converted to developers, to private parties, that where they feel that it's good merchandise and we can make money and create investment in our city. And this is I look down at that and I'm saying, oh my God, that's taking that lot and destroying its ability to be converted to a merchantable property.
Well, like I said,
Is that design, though?
I think I mentioned earlier, and it actually shows up better in the other drawing, that is a very unusually shaped parcel, and the stormwater swell you're seeing there is in the right-of-way, the Dunes Drive right-of-way.
Okay. So, again, we're kind of in the design discussion too, Paul. So I'm assuming we're going to have other opportunities to discuss the details.
Yes.
Okay. So tonight, we're interested in
gonna
possibly
give them-
moving this along. Is
Yes.
that
So
right?
I will move the local agency agreement 28220 between the state of Oregon through ODOT and the city of Oregon City, understanding the urban renewal commitment is $1 million.
Second.
And just I wanted to just clarify, the agreement is between the state of Oregon and the Oregon City Urban Renewal Commission. I think you mentioned the city of Oregon City, and that was how it was stated in the agenda, but the actual agreement does indicate that.
I will substitute in for the city of Oregon City, the Oregon City Urban Renewal Agency.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. We got a question. Hearing none. Can we pull the board, please?
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith? Aye. Commissioner Neely?
Yes.
Commissioner Yates?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar?
No.
And Chair Shaw.
Aye. Okay.
Motion passes 7 to 1.
All right, very good. Thanks. Item 4B, Clackamas Landscape Supply Lease Renewal. Mr. Underwood, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a lease renewal for Clackamas Landscape Supply. This was first brought to you in January, I think January 21st this year, at which time the Commission directed staff to renegotiate the lease with the tenant. We've since done that. We had an executive session on this in February. Out of those discussions, it was directed that clear termination clause be included into the lease. We've added that clause, working with the city attorneys, and you'll see that in the lease on page 1 under new lease agreement. item 1.2, entitled Term. And it says the term of this lease shall be for a period of 3 years commencing on January 1, 2012, and expiring at midnight, December 31st, 2014, unless sooner terminated as provided herein. Notwithstanding, the foregoing landlord may terminate this lease at any time during the term of the lease, including a renewal term, by providing tenant with not less than 12 months prior to written notice of termination. So there it is, right up front. So I'm just presenting that to the commission tonight for approval, so we can renew this lease.
Thanks, Eric. Commissioner Edgar, please.
Thank you. Good to see the principal of the Clackamas Landscaping here, and runs a good business, and I buy product from him, from the company. I still believe that the termination clause is okay, but a year is longer than most termination clauses that I've seen or executed myself. And I think that I would have loved to have seen something in 6 months. It should go annually, and at the annual, in a sense, renewal of a 3-year lease renewed annually, that we're saying then that we're giving them 12 months, and that's long, but to me, again, this is an extremely valuable piece of property, primarily because of the visibility and access, not only from 205, but from the new jug handle and all of the activity associated with Home Depot there, and it could be a linchpin property in subsequent redevelopment opportunities that exist not only from the location, but from the railroad station that we have there immediately to it, north, where this property is immediately north of it. And I would like very much to think that though we've got a good business, a good company running the property, using the property and facilitating it, and they're paying rent and have not been a hassle to the city in any way, that we still are in doing this, knowing that the property has real value, maybe significant real value, in creating more jobs, more investment, and that we, just because we've entered into this lease, that we enter into the lease concurrent with us really taking and putting this property onto the market to find out what is the high water mark. What is there anybody that looks at it? Because if it's something that can bring economic development, jobs, investment, and create more investment in a halo effect within the area, we would be fools to not get it floated and find out what people really think. You know, it's my personal opinion that it's got a lot of value, and I appreciate the money that we're getting. But right now, and I appreciate we got a good business in there operating right now. But I still, at the same time, as trying to be a fiduciarily responsible person to the urban renewal, think that we owe it to our city and to economic development and job creation that we keep it out there as an opportunity. And I would have preferred to see that if we had somebody that came in and said, yes, I like it, that I don't know how long it would take for them to do things, but if I just felt like that 6 months would have been better for us than a year.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment to that?
Yes, Eric, please.
Well, there are two reasons we did the 12-month. Well, three. 12-month termination clauses have always been in the lease, so we haven't changed that. The second reason that it's 12 months, it's business friendly. It's kind to the tenant that's been there for years and years and years. That gives him plenty of time to find a new location and to move. 6 months is cutting it kind of tight to do that. the third reason we felt, I think, a 12-month termination clause is feasible is because of the condition of that site. It is in it's in a great location. It's in an area that is prone for redevelopment. However, there's an appraisal that was done in 2009 that discounted that site drastically because of the problems and the issues that site has. It's in a floodplain. It's in a wetlands buffer. It has bad soils. It would require balanced cut and fill. It's going to require monitoring, the EPA, and any permitting that occurs on that site. If a new tenant were to come in or a developer, it would take them at least a year to get through the permitting and the design. So I think 12 months in that respect is fair. With the comparables, there are no comparables in the area for that site, and that's what was stated in the appraisal because of the conditions of that site. And they weren't even sure how much to discount the value of that property. So that was in our discussion. That's why we felt like the lease rate that we have is a good lease rate. But anyone that comes in and develops that site, it's not, I'll just say, a site like this is not going to get developed in 6 months.
Okay. Thanks, Eric. Commissioner Munn.
I would just reiterate, 6 months is too short for a business to pack up and find a new location and move. Trust me, I just moved one office, and that took longer than 6 months.
Okay.
So I just think it needs to be, let's see, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I
Commissioner,
couldn't find the motion.
Commissioner Neely.
I don't think any of this precludes the marketing of that site. We're going to be doing that.
Right.
And everything he said, that Mr. Underwood said, I agree with. And I guess I have some real sympathy for the leasee. The reason he's at that site is because the county said they were going to move their operations off of Abernathy Creek to another piece of property they owned, and he had to find another place to operate his business. Ours was available. And I think the same thing will be the case when we find somebody that we're going to market to find a site of the size and of the location to enable him to operate his business is probably going to take him some time. I think a year's notification is probably about the minimum that he would require to actually locate a sufficiently sized place that has access to people like we do there close to 205. And I think we need to take his situation into account.
Okay. So.
I move that we accept the agreement.
Very good.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there a question, please? Anybody else? Hearing none, shall we poll the board?
Commissioner Mum.
Aye.
Commissioner Roth.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Neely.
Aye.
Commissioner Yates.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar.
Aye.
And Chair Shaw.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Okay. Okay. Moving on to general business item 4C, adaptive reuse rehab grant criteria. Mr. Underwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item was presented to the Commission February 17th of this year. Just to kind of recap, we've had this program, the adaptive reuse program, in the urban renewal budget since the start of this fiscal year. However, it's not been utilized due to the fact that we have not developed a criteria for that. So at the February 17th, I presented the draft criteria to the Commission. They were in agreement, other than stating a historical reference for the downtown projects that might occur. And so staff's gone back to tweak the criteria a little bit to include some of that language. and I'll just point it out. It's on page 4, under proposed evaluation criteria, where I have, in order to make it fair for the entire urban renewal district, in my mind, I've placed a note underneath the basic criteria that they have to meet that states applicants submitting projects for grant funding in Oregon City's historic areas are encouraged to preserve or restore the building's historical interior characteristics. And so I'm presenting to this to the commission tonight. Hopefully, that meets that request. So,
Trying to locate that, Barry. So
page 4.
Very bottom.
It's kind of the bottom of the last quarter of the page there. Proposed evaluation criteria.
oh, okay, good.
It's the last
Oh, yeah,
paragraph.
that's a good idea. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith, are you okay with that? Weren't you the one that wanted? Well, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
that
I
you're
think
good
it's-
with that.
I think it's just, we needed to point that out as an
I
issue.
think you're
think
right.
it's- I
Yeah.
didn't expect it to be in there in any major way, but it
Right.
needs to be. That I think that's great.
So then, do we need to just move to approve, or?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so can,
Very good.
Move to approve Urban Renewal Commission Adaptive Reuse Rehab Program criteria.
second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. We have a question.
Yes.
Mr. Commissioner Edgar?
In areas where there's historic properties or we're going after something historic, not all of us are the best judges of historic restoration or imagery, and I have my opinions, and everybody can have opinions. But what I'd love to see is whenever we're doing any of these rehab type grants in a historic area where in fact somebody is implying that it's a historic property, I would love to see them run it by the HRB. That is their job, and though it may not be a registered or other justification, but if the historic review, if the Urban Renewal Board says, we would like this to be passed by the HRB as part of the process, part of the criteria for saying, are they meeting the guidelines? Are they really approaching this in a manner that is significantly of a historic sense, restoring it? I think they would be a better judge than all of us, and I would love to hear what they would have to say. And secondly, I guess that I have some concerns, and I maybe have stated them before, but I would like to see whenever we get over a certain threshold where money is being, urban renewal money is being given out, that it result in a reappraisal where new tax increment is generated that effectively pays the funding that we put into it. So that ordinarily, if I did a project and I'm rebuilding something, and if I don't exceed maybe 30,000 or some percentage of the property's asset value, it doesn't result in any new tax increment. And if it doesn't result in any new tax increment, again, we're putting money out from urban renewal without a secure method that actually pays it back over and above what it would happen anyway. So normally, all these properties get a 3% annual increase, but if it never gets to a point where it exceeds what the assessor's office is asking for, we're not getting any additional new money.
I think we talked about that last meeting.
I know, and
didn't we?
I just
So,
don't think it's an issue.
I think that we don't need to throw up a bunch of roadblocks to people that are trying to do a good job. So
that's
we
not
got to
what-
be thoughtful.
That's not what he's doing. He's asking valid questions here.
Hang on there. Hang on. Well, okay, I don't see you on there.
Oh, well, I tried to.
Okay. So anyway, I kind of agree with your first part. We're running these projects by the Historic Review Board.
Right.
And only on an advisory basis, because they are not the,
Yes.
they don't
Excellent.
have
Right.
the control, but on an advisory basis, probably good ideas. So, Tony.
I think it'd be helpful. Historically, the Historic Review Board has reviewed projects. They've reviewed projects that are either within a conservation district, within a historic district, or a landmark, and we have adopted criteria that spell out what are applicable. And so we'd be asking, what standard would they be using? It's difficult enough in that it's very subjective when you have the approval criteria that we have. So to just put it in front of them and say,
What do you think?
especially if the building's not designated, the owner's not requesting to have it designated, it's a policy discussion that you really want to consider, because to just say send it to them and have them comment on it without any guideline approval criteria, do they need to comply with the National Park Service guidelines? Do they need to comply with Chapter 1742 of our historic section of our municipal code? There needs to be some review criteria, and even then,
We should have it too.
Well, I think the issue should be we should have the HRB somehow develop some kind of way to get involved with our project. Instead of us going to them with this, they should, and I think that's the historical question, is why we don't have a historic overlay on downtown.
is owner consent, and you need a majority of the property owners to agree to a conservation district.
Okay.
And
All right.
that's one of the biggest obstacles.
And this says historic review if needed, but I don't see a clarification of what that if needed is.
I'm not as familiar with it as you are. As to what the intent is there,
Yeah.
of
the HR, of what they would be reviewing, and what those comments, how they would be useful to you, and what they would be viewing it against.
Okay. Commissioner Edgar, or
No, they're on, we got Rocky,
I'm taking me off.
oh, really? How come I don't-
Okay, I see Doug, and I see Rocky, then I see Phil Yates.
Where am I?
It's on the floor.
You got to go on the floor.
Hey, all right. I'm a new guy.
Well, that's all right. I don't know why it doesn't work the other way, but it does.
Commissioner Neely.
Thank you. I don't have a problem with the historic review looking at recommendations for redesign. I think they would have a different function, but oftentimes when people are before the historic review board, many recommendations that are very beneficial to who's ever doing the project are being put forward. And I look at them less from the standpoint that they're making a recommendation to us, but they're making recommendations to the developer. And I think that can be done. Oftentimes you've got an input from a body there that has ideas that the developer may well be willing to accept. And so I don't look at them to make a recommendation to us whether we're going to approve of funding. I mean, we got some criteria that we're going to be working with in terms how many points they get for doing these kinds of things that we want to see happen in a mixed-use corridor. And I think that's great. But I do see the benefit of them having to, being put to a situation where they put their ideas before a group that actually has worked with people before. I know you've been on the Historic Review Board, and I know that in the past, and I presume presently, there are people there that could make good suggestions to a developer, and that's how I would see it would function.
Would it be appropriate for the historic review staff planner that you have to serve in that role, or do we want to do design?
Well, you got architects there that you don't have. I mean, you do have a body of expertise that we don't have on staff. In fact, I think your staff input at those meetings would be valuable as well. I just don't see it being I don't visualize the Historic Review Board making a recommendation to us to say, no, you don't do it, yes, you do. I think it's more a recommendation to the developer.
Yeah, and
And we have our-
it's not going to be every case.
So
No,
It's
no.
probably just going to be maybe one or two items that
Yeah.
we may want that
Right.
interpretation.
And will you provide that direction? I mean, how will we know which buildings go?
We'd probably.
Well,
we'd
if it's in
ask
it,
for it.
if it's being considered as a historic property, and that's the criteria that, where they're asking for extra money, then that's where it falls, it becomes applicable.
Okay. Commissioner Smith?
The point is that if someone owns a building downtown and it's not a historic building, which pretty much all of them aren't, they can do whatever they want. The only question is, what are they going to do with our money?
Yes.
And
Right.
if, so we can't ask every project to go to the Historic Review Board, but if a project comes to us where we think our money is being used to destroy the historic character of the building, we can ask the Historic Review Board, is this the best way to spend our money?
Yes.
I mean, and that is not something we do with every project. That's something when the project comes to us, where we decide the criteria, where we look at it, that we
Yep.
say, gosh, I don't know. I mean, a perfect example is the bank building. Is the awning, are we spending money on an awning that may be taken down? I mean, when it comes to what our money is being spent on, we have a say in what that money is doing.
So it should be a
And
case
we
by
can
case.
ask the Historic Review Board, is this the best way to do that?
Yeah.
But I don't think we need to do it in every single case, and I don't think it needs to be detailed in this criteria here.
Right.
Okay.
So
Commissioner Yates?
I agree with Rocky. I think
Yep.
the issue here is if the building's historical, it's going to go before the review board, and I agree with you too. And if it's not historical, then what are they doing with it? I mean, it's just a building. And so what criteria are they going to use? What recommendations are they going to make? I mean, you're going to recommend historic windows on a non-historic building? I mean, it just doesn't make much sense to me to require a non-historic building to go through this extra layer of review. We're going to look at the building. I disagree completely with Rocky. I don't think we need to do it.
Okay. Mr. William Gifford, coming from the audience here.
If I may, Commissioners, my name is William Gifford, and I live in Oregon City. And I just am asking for a little bit of clarification regarding the adaptive reuse and rehab criteria, because I was under the impression that this was a different program than the facade restorations. And the facades are things that we see, I mean, that the public will see insofar as what the building looks like. But if these are really internal modifications, hopefully we'll get some residences and some other reuses out of these facilities, then, I mean, if they aren't historic buildings and you're not going to see it from the outside anyway, it seems to me as though to require some sort of an historic review is just going to be tying a developer's hands and getting the maximum usage out of the building. I heartily agree that we ought to have some, and we do, have criteria for the facades, because we have a look that we want. But insofar as internal, I agree with almost everybody else.
Okay. Thanks, Will.
Thanks.
Commissioner Smith?
My response to that was, it's because it's our money. And I'm saying that we have buildings downtown, give you an example, where there are certain characteristics in the inside of the buildings. The Star Theater building downtown has murals still in the ceiling that are hidden to view. If that building came to us and asked, we want to redo the building, as an urban renewal commissioner, I wouldn't want to see our money spent to take something out that's key to the historic nature of that building. If they want to do it with their own money, fine. But I think that's what I'm talking about. There are things in the interior of the building that are key to those buildings, regardless of whether we label them historic or not. All the buildings downtown I consider historic buildings. On paper, they're not, unfortunately.
Right.
Okay. Commissioner Neely.
Just quickly, I mean, this might be a mechanism actually for a developer who sees something that it's going to cost them a little bit more money to preserve, and we become a mechanism to help preserve it, too.
Okay.
I would like to see that added.
Okay.
There was a motion and a second
Yeah,
a long time ago.
There's a motion on the floor.
Okay, so much for the question.
I'll call the
Anything
question.
else?
How's
Call
that?
the question. Okay, can we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Mom?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner Yates?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar?
No.
And Chair Shaw.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-1.
Token no guy.
Yes.
Okay. Very good, thanks. Okay, we're going to move to discussion items. And item 5A is going to be the train depot brainstorming session. Yay.
Maybe. Let me, if I may
Okay.
ask the commission, we are running a little behind time.
Yes, we are.
And I was hoping to have a little more time to have a thorough discussion on this and get some good ideas. I don't know, in the interest of time, I don't know if we're going to have enough
Would you
flexibility
mind
to
rolling
do
out
that.
for the commissioners the general concept that you had?
That I have. I can roll the general concept out that I had in mind, and then maybe we can put this as a discussion item on the next agenda.
That'd be great. Thanks.
The idea that I had with that property, given the fact its location right now and it's needing a redeveloped area, it's going to be hard to recruit any viable, sustaining business in that location, in that building, in my opinion. The idea that I had, and now that we're getting, I don't know if everybody's seen the Oregonian article that was on the front page, how we're getting more traffic via commuters through Oregon City. I think it's a good chance to capitalize on that and create in one portion of the building a kind of a patron, kind of a waiting area, which could house some sort of snack kiosk or coffee kiosk in there. That could also, we could also have an opportunity to display and highlight some Oregon City historical artifacts. It's kind of a museum.
Tell me, how do you really feel?
You have a rooting session.
All right.
You got to make a request to be on the floor.
It's all good, Eric.
So, yeah, why do we need more time to talk about this?
Well, wait,
He's on a roll.
I don't know. Somebody might have some other ideas. So we have that. We have the kiosk. There's a great space in the back of that building that used to be loading doors. That could be a roll-up kind of thing where you could serve coffee over the counter, have tables out on the platform. At the same time, when you're displaying the artifacts of Oregon City, you could generate interest for what's across the street. The end of the Oregon Trail Museum. You could capitalize on tourism that way with the increased traffic on Amtrak. And that's just one section of the building. The other portion of the building, I had an idea, and that it goes in line with creating that business-friendly environment to nurture that type of environment here in Oregon City, is to start a business incubator for entrepreneurial businesses, for startups. Since we own that property, we could offer a low interest, or we could offer a low lease rate to get them started. We could sign contracts a year to two to get them going, and it could act ultimately as a feeder into some of our downtown areas or vacant storefronts for this creative niche that I'm seeing here that's growing here in Oregon City.
Tell them the slogan, will you?
Oh, my slogan's really cheesy.
Go for it.
The marketing slogan that I came up with on this is getting business on track in Oregon City. I have to toot my own horn on that. But that's the sense of urgency and wanting to get that before the commission, because we have a little funding in this year's budget to do some design work on that. And I've already been talking to some architects to get kind of an estimate of what it would cost us, and I don't think it would be that much, and we could get in even construction at the end of the year. So.
All right, very good.
Still have 10 minutes. I think that's good. Done.
Why do we need to work session?
Why have a discussion?
Request permission to brainstorm for 10 minutes.
Okay, well, we've got a couple other little things here. So, does anybody want to? What do you got?
We've got questions here.
Oh,
No.
On the floor.
Oh, Commissioner Neely.
I mean, I think it's a great idea. My concern is when things have been discussed, they have been discussed in advance, and we've got to do something with that building. It is a train station, and whatever we want to do there is be consistent to the history, although there were discussions of whether we should purchase it or not. The fact is that structure would have been destroyed in Portland, where it had been moved to. It had been moved back to here, great expense. We're very lucky to have it. And I think it's got to be tied into a functioning train station in some form. But I don't hear anything that you've said that goes contrary to that particular concept.
I agree.
That's right.
And I've actually been talking to a prospective business here that is interested in that area that could also dovetail into that use by providing another use that goes along with the tourism and so forth. And I've been talking with Blaine Meyer, and I don't know if you want to speak to some of that, but he has an idea for bicycle tourism and possibly a bicycle kiosk there.
Well, we could, and that would be a great idea maybe for when we continue our brainstorming for the next session, and Blaine will then be prepared.
I bet he's prepared to say something.
I think he is. Anyway, let's continue the brainstorming session to next time. There. Thank you, Eric.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you.
You're on track, buddy. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, we've got a consent agenda here for minutes of January 18th.
So you're not entertaining any of the other comments?
Oh, geez, sorry. Okay, here we go. Commissioner Roth, we're back to brainstorming here.
I've just got a kind of a basic question. If you do this roll-up thing where you can do coffee and stuff, when I've used the train there, it doesn't stop very long. So you don't have time to get off the train and grab a cup of coffee unless you call ahead of time.
Waiting to get on.
Yeah, it's getting on. Maybe we'll give them reason to stay a little bit longer.
There you go. Wait for the next
Because
train.
I'm thinking, if it's me from Oregon City, I'm not going to shop for Oregon City stuff.
Right.
Okay.
And I go at the last minute to get on the train.
It could be, for folks that are waiting on family or someone to come by.
Okay. I just didn't
they
get
could
that
take
part.
advantage of some of that too. Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Yates, I say, did you give up?
You gave up.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. So, okay, we'll go to Commissioner Edgar, please.
Well, I'm interested in anything we can do to make that train station more viable as a commuter stop. And now that we know that the state of Oregon has purchased another train, and there's going to be a potential of a Portland to Eugene early morning run that could come through there too, we have the ability to potentially bring people in from Union Station in Portland to this destination, which in effect makes the property over there, the Clackamas landscaping property, a contiguous property, even more valuable as far as that interconnecting piece. And so anything that enhances its ability, and if the initiative that's been booked now for light rail, which has, most of the people believe has probably a 60 or 70% probability of passing across the state, our rail access and our ability to bring commuters into Oregon City, this may be in out years our primary one thing that we can assure will happen or can happen.
That's
And
good
so-
for discussion.
So it's one of those things that I think that's one of the reasons why we should not, we should do everything we can to try to get into the queue with UP or whoever it is, Amtrak, the different players to figure how we can get them enticed into this picture too.
Great, good. Okay. Going around and around, nobody's talking, it's not on here, I don't see.
No, forget that.
Okay, good, all right.
It's irrelevant.
All right, now we can move to consent agenda, correct?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved, seconded.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner Yates? Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar?
Aye.
And Chair Shaw.
Aye.
May I just make a suggestion? Since Blaine Myers is here, could he give him 3 minutes?
Please, I think so.
Now you know.
Okay.
Now you know
You
why.
want
We
3
got,
minutes?
we got time for this evening, guys? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
You don't have anything to report, do you?
5 minutes.
I'm Blaine Meyer, Oregon City business owner, and glad to be here. We've been, as you know, they recently had a Clackamas County Tourism and Travel Oregon had a studio with Oregon City and West Lynn to discuss bicycle tourism. And so, as the chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee, I attended that. And afterwards, I got to thinking and doing some research, and we decided that there was a real gap in the area of bicycle shops. And so we're in the midst of writing a plan for First City Cycles, a dealership here in Oregon City. And it has 4 parts to it: retail sales and repairs, those are 2. And we're looking for a shop here currently in the downtown area. And then the other components are the rentals and the tourism. So I've led tours all around Oregon in the past, and so I'm really excited about that. That the ability to develop 5 or 6 different packages. And I started looking at other things that you may already know some of this, but Portland is number 2 in the entire world for bicycle friendliness. So, and we're behind Amsterdam and just ahead of Copenhagen. So it's a pretty prestigious thing, and Clackamas County, of course, wants to capitalize on that and bring bicycle tourism. Did some research, and you can find people that are willing to come from literally all around the world to drop $3,500 to $4,000 on a 7-day, 7-night tour. They call them eco vacations. So they'll come and stay at a local hotel and then either go out for 7 days or do 7 days of different day trips. So we certainly have all of those kinds of things available to design those kinds of packages. So the idea was that we thought this would be so perfect. You could do a rails to trails, park and pedal, and so you could use the train depot there to do the tourism and the rentals. There are also some exciting things. A program called Bicycle Share. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but you can go in and actually, with your credit card and put it in, pull a bike out of the turnstile, adjust the seat, and away you go. So usually 5 to a station. And so just thinking about, we may not have the density here to the demand for it, but to have one at the train depot or at the college, and maybe both, you could have people come in and, on the train, stop, take a bike out. Usually the first half hour is free, and, you could drive, pedal down to Main Street, take the elevator up, and go see the historic homes. And so lots of possibilities, lots of ideas. We also thought of a mini museum there that would show transportation, kind of past, present, and future. I'm really big on the future part, having things that inspire people. And so they come there and have to talk about it and send their friends to that same thing. So anyway, those are some ideas that we're kicking around, and I'd like to explore that with you. So.
Thanks, Blake. Very good.
Good job, Blaine.
Now we've cut into the city manager's report time.
Sorry, David.
No comment tonight.
Wow.
Except one thing I was going to say for the city commission, but I want to make sure this commission hears it too. The city received notification today from S&P that we have retained our AA- bond rating.
Yes, great.
Bravo.
Thank you, staff.
Just right behind federal government.
That's right.
We're moving in the right
Okay,
direction.
very good. Okay, anything else for getting the order here?
Future agenda items?
Future agenda items is here.
We talked about looking at a lot of our properties, what we're doing on trying to create economic development, and what assets we have. We were going to also had an agenda item one time to how we were going to exchange the property that is being utilized for the jug handle, and we had voted that we wanted to have some type of exchange so that that property could move from urban renewal ownership to city ownership, and we receive something in exchange for that is merchantable for economic development.
That's those items are what I was wanting to include in our prioritization workshop that I had proposed, and we're looking at the first meeting in April for that, April 4th.
And also another goal-setting session where we really go back and take a review, because a year ago we really didn't get through a lot. And we'll have a new member up here participating in setting goals. And it would be good for us to get it out in front of everybody again and review where we are and what we're doing.
Yes, time for a review. Okay, anybody else for future business? Hearing none. Are we okay, Nancy? Okay. Adjourn.